And I want to see. Is there? Aha, there is a chat. Nice. That's exactly what I want. Are you guys able to use the chat, by the way? Let me see. First, I'll have new sound focus. Okay, there's invite to speak. Cool. Show requests. Request to speak. Sorry, guys, I'm talking to myself because I still get used to Discord. Cool. If you guys look over in the right-hand side at the top, there should be a little chat bubble. So if you guys have any questions, you can use that. And if that works, let me know. Drop a chat. If it doesn't, just DM me, and then I can see if I can find another way to get you guys to communicate. Oh, let's see. Oh, I might be muted. Input. Oh, you know what it is? 1 second. Take that out. Actually, don't let me do this. Unplug it. I could work. Test. Okay, that seems to work. Cool. Can you hear me now? Testing. It's showing that it's working on mine. My iPhone, maybe. Try this. Connected to Alexander's MacBook Pro. Can you hear me now on my phone? Checking. I take it you still can't hear me. Why is this not working? Hello. Maybe it's low. Okay, cool. I'm going to make sure. I mean, it says that that's good. Mike, check. I mean, yeah, it's picking me up pretty good. Let me switch over to... That's cool. What's up? Hello. We're just testing some things. Can you hear me now, Alex? Okay. What the hell is going on with Discord? Okay. That's so weird. Channel. All right. Cool. Test. Can you hear me now?
Hello. Yes.
Dude, it's so weird. Like events for some reason don't work. Like this is the second time, and one time it worked, and now this time it doesn't work. So I have no idea. It's so weird. All right, cool. Let me go snag the other folks, and
I could stay here.
yeah. I'll be right back. I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right, cool. And then just let me throw some announcements saying that Stage is acting to Mickey per usual, and that we're in this voice channel. Networking event is in voice channels.
I was just afraid to make a comment because I didn't want to be that one guy that derailed everything.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, this is not the first time, and I'm trying to figure it out just because it's got some good like moderation tools I'd like to be able to use just in case, like whenever this community gets built, it'd be really useful to be able to use that feature of Discord. But if it ain't usable, oh well. Okay, cool. Well, I guess we won't delay. We'll get started. So before I do, is there oh yes, okay, there's a chat in here. Sweet. That makes me happy. Okay, so I'm going to share something with you guys, and we'll be using it. We might use it, we might not, but I also kind of want this to be interactive. So that's like a mural board. I don't think you guys need to make an account. You should just be able to hop in. But if not, we can. I'll stream it so you guys can see everything that's going on. So yeah, let's start. I got YouTube going. Okay, cool. So just quick disclaimer. As I was putting this together, I was wondering how I could actually make this useful instead of saying like, oh, just go out and don't be shy, or put together an elevator pitch and things like that. Like the standard advice that people have heard, because I'm actually pretty shy. I've gotten really good at overcoming my shyness. But I am introverted pretty heavily, according to the actual Myers-Briggs test, which I've taken 7 times because my jobs want me to do that. I'm pretty introverted and naturally pretty shy. I actually wrote books on this subject on a previous business I had. If you guys are interested, I can point those to you. I'm not trying to sell those, by the way. I'm very curious about this because I wanted to learn how to connect with people. And so as I was building this out, I didn't want to be like a 12-step program to networking. Like first extend your hand and then introduce yourself and screw that, right? And maybe we'll get into that in some later videos. Like if you guys are interested in, well, hey, how do I create like a follow-up schedule? Or, maybe what are some things that I can say to break the ice? We can go over that. But I think that without overcoming what we're going to get into today, that stuff's still going to feel really, really weird and slimy and just awkward, which I think is why a lot of people feel not great about networking in general. So this is actually going to be more of like I guess like a philosophical, psychological. Like I'm not a psychiatrist or philosopher by trade, but this I think feels more like that than a step by step tactical program. So that's just my disclaimer. So let's get into it. First of all, I guess since we can all, be on this chat and talk, um, I does anybody here like? Do you guys have an aversion to networking? Like, does it feel uncomfortable or gross? Maybe to you. You can raise your hand. You can drop in the chat, or you can just be like, "Yeah, it does." You don't have to say anything.
I mean, for me, it depends.
Okay.
I try to like do like the marketing of myself type of networking, and I do agree it does feel a little bit slimy at times.
Okay.
But my current strategy that I've been trying that really has helped me a lot is to just not think about networking and just focus on making friends,
Yeah.
because I think that naturally leads into all that stuff.
Yeah, I think you're definitely on the right train of thought there, and that's a wonderful piece of advice. And I think what today we'll get into will reinforce why that tends to work better than a lot of other things. So and also some skill sets that can you could build on along with that. But yeah, absolutely. Like when it tends to feel like you're forcing something, and I don't know why it keeps truncating names, but X, X, you also mentioned that it can feel forced, but other times it feels organic. Um, yeah, it can depend on what the scenario is, maybe our perceived relationship to other people, things like that. So, with that said, I'm going to share my screen if I can get my computer to work properly across these dual monitors. And yeah, I'd like to do the whole thing. iPhone, no, I don't stream my iPhone. It's killing me, guys. This stuff, applications, devices, HTML, I guess, yeah, make my slide.
Speaking of networking, I did meet someone that works on Discord, so maybe I'll just yell at him with all your complaints.
Yeah, please do. Be like, why isn't the stage working? It doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, that'd be awesome if you would do that. So I'm gonna just I'm gonna use this white space over here, and we'll do like a quick exercise. But basically, I want you to think like if you have any sort of aversion to networking, one, you're not crazy, but I want you to think about attending a networking event and tell me like what are some of the feelings that come up that may make you, or thoughts that come up that make you be like, this feels really uncomfortable. Like, I know I get anxiety, but feel free to rattle them off if you have any. Feels like a salesman. Yeah. Feels like a cold call. Those are good. Very nice. I know. Maybe a bit of an imposter syndrome. Maybe like with the salesiness. like I'm trying to get something, or maybe they're trying to get something out of me. Um, like feeling to like feelings like, oh, I'm don't belong here. I'm not good enough. Things like that. How do I stand out in the ocean? That's a good one. And maybe like also how do I stand out without feeling like I'm trying too hard? You know, like you don't want to be, hey everybody, look at me. Like you don't want to be that guy. Yeah. It's funny to think too, like I try hard. I was talking to my friend the other day about how I think that's probably the greatest insult that the millennial and Gen Z generation came up with because it's just such a simple term. You can't escape it. Um, when I do talk about my own stuff, fear of failure with overselling. Oh, okay, yeah, overselling yourself. So overpromise, underdeliver. Yeah, cool. And we'll pick some of these. I'm gonna do one more just so I have like a box because it just kind of this is such a perfect opportunity to have a nice rectangle. Anyway, yeah, so we'll roll with these, and some of these we may dive deeper into. And so, yeah, I want you to think like you go to a networking event and you can imagine showing up, and these are some of the feelings that pop into your head, and the other thing too is like, what are you trying to achieve during a networking event? Well, like, yeah, maybe you're trying to find some business. Maybe you're trying to share your demo reel. Ultimately, like this feeling of getting something, or you can think of a more positive way, like, well, I'm here to just meet people who share a common interest and let those things be a byproduct, which, yeah, that's a really great way to go about it. So, another one in here that I'll throw in, does anybody, feel free to drop in here. Does anybody consider themselves introverted? So we got anybody on YouTube? Cool. See some typing going on, so I'll hold off. Short conversation. People open to people, and I consider myself introverted. I can force myself to come out of my shell most of the time. Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. You say force yourself to come out of your shell because I say the same thing too. But it's like, yeah, you can do it, but by the act of forcing, it's just like not natural. So the only person I type is an extrovert, but with an introverted type. That's interesting. I know like some folks can be closer to the middle. I'm not familiar with that, but I do know like there's some where it's like you'll have like a type A, type T or something. I think that's a different thing, but I do know there's like subtypes. But yeah, like maybe there's certain aspects of introversion or extroversion that you adopt. But cool. So maybe we have a little bit of that in us. So anyway, I put all that out there because for a lot of folks, when they do networking, and sometimes they're like, "Oh, why am I not better at it? Why does it feel weird?" Well, if you feel shy or it feels salesy or it feels like a cold call or it feels scummy, or you feel like you don't belong, or you're trying to find commonality, right? If there's like this disconnect that you're sensing in networking, well, no wonder nobody would really fully enjoy these sorts of events. Like if you did, that would kind of make you crazy if you enjoyed it, right? If you enjoyed something that you didn't like, that just doesn't make sense. So now there's kind of like a hidden problem in here, but before I get into that, I want to highlight something that I notice, because if I dive into what some of the issue is, it's going to sound really, really, how do I say, cliche. And let me start by saying cliche solutions are horrible when taken at face value. But before I divulge this, I want you guys to take a moment and think like, why something becomes cliche in the first place. And it's usually because the first person who gave that solution or thought about things in that particular way, like it was actually really good. And then people just kind of adopted it. And the more they adopted it, the less they thought about it until it didn't have any substance behind it anymore. And so that's my objective today is you've probably heard some of the things that we're going to go over to help with this. What I want to bring is to really help show the substance behind maybe why those original pieces of advice or solutions were said to begin with. So, before I get into it, does anybody want to know, generally speaking, why maybe networking feels uncomfortable? It's pretty broad. I'd be surprised if anybody gets this, but if I say it, you'll probably roll your eyes. But I promise by the end of this, I don't think you will. Fear of unknown is pretty good. Fear of unknown is pretty good. That's close. Close. I would say yes, but it's getting further along. Rejection, close. It's ultimately what we think about it, right? If we're afraid of getting rejected because we think we're going to get rejected, if we have anxiety around it because we think that it's uncomfortable for us, or we think that's a natural, right? Like all these things are ultimately, we have a perception of networking because there's some people who are very comfortable in networking because a lot of these things are either tempered more or they actually enjoy the process of networking. So case in point, right? When y'all were saying, oh, I think of it as meeting friends. Yeah. If I go into it with this idea of meeting friends versus being salesy, wanting to fit in, that's good. I'm gonna. It helps it feel less comfortable because we change our thought processes around it. Now, I know it sounds super duper cliche. We'll get into maybe how some of these things begin to manifest themselves and how to counteract them. So today, we're going to really think about, well, let's dive into some of these phrases that you have here. So, I want to point out. Well, how about this? Let's start actually with my little analogy here because I think that's going to put it into some context. Okay. So let's play a game. Let's say you guys are at a show. You're watching the Black Mages play. Do you guys know what the Black Mages are? Nobuo Uematsu's band. Final Fantasy plays like metal versions of Final Fantasy covers. They're freaking sweet. I'd love to go see them one day. Anyway, so let's say you guys are going to a music show. And by the way, in this scenario, I'm not sure if you're right. It does sound sick. I'd be so hyped to do that. I'm not sure if you guys are smokers. In this scenario, we're going to say you guys are smokers, just to help this sit a little bit. So, but you're in the process of quitting. So it's halftime for this Black Mages show, and you go outside and you have a pack of cigarettes with you, and you're like, you know what, I'm in the process of quitting. So you find 3 people. We're actually gonna make this 3 people. I want to add something here. Okay, you find 3 people standing outside and you offer them each a cigarette. Okay. So person A says, hey, no thanks, I'm trying to quit. And person B says, no thanks, I'm not a smoker. And then person C says, no thanks, I'm allergic to smoke. Cool. So you're like, all right, no harm, no foul. I was just trying to offer, no biggie. Show starts back up. You go back inside, you finish the show. And then the end of the event comes and show ends and you're back outside of the venue and you find these 3 people that you would talk to before, and you guys are just talking about how awesome the show was, and people begin to go home, but you're still there. And then out of the side door is Nobuo Uematsu himself. the composer for like the golden age of Final Fantasy, walks through the side door, and he's got a cigarette in his mouth. And like, if you're like me, you're like, holy shit, it's Nobuo Uematsu. That's so cool. And you're like gawking at this guy. And he turns to you and he waves, and then he like looks around and he pulls out some cigarettes and offers, if you guys want to smoke with him. So let me ask you, of these three people, who is most likely going to bum a cigarette off of Nobuo Uematsu? We'll call this guy Person A. We'll give them really awesome names, Person B and Person C. Who is most likely to bum a cigarette off of Nobuo Uematsu? The guy trying to quit, the guy who's not a smoker, or the guy who's allergic to smoke? A. Yeah, absolutely. A is the one. I would 100% agree with you with that. And well, like, why not C? Let me reverse that. Why wouldn't C be most likely to do that? Health reasons. Yep. See, X is still typing, so I'm excited to see what you got to say. They don't have the ability to smoke without consequences. Yep. Yeah, that's awesome. What about Person B? He's in the middle. Would he bum a cigarette off of Nobuo Uematsu? Yeah. Yeah. That's a pretty damn good reason. Yeah. They never form those habits, but there's a chance he's a fan. It may sway him to try it. Yeah. I would say I'd probably be Person B, right? I used to be, I used to smoke a little bit when I was younger. I quit decades ago. But Nobuo Uematsu came, and I'm not a smoker anymore. I safely say that. But Nobuo Uematsu came out and was like, "Hey man, you want a cigarette?" I'd be like, I'd probably take a couple drags for the story. You know what I mean? So yeah. So what's interesting in this, if I were to, there's also a pattern here. Okay. And I think about it as mutability, if that's even a word. Right? A person who's trying to do something, that's very mutable, right? You could try one day, you could decide not to try the next day, like, versus someone who's, no thanks, I'm not a smoker, right? Like, they may not have formed the habit, but it's not like it's set in stone. But they're probably not just going to pick up a cigarette for any reason. So it's like, maybe it's a little mutable, but not really. But then, as you'd mentioned before, right, there's somebody who, there's consequences. Like, they can't smoke. That's not their decision anymore. Sorry, I should say not mutable. I don't know why I said somewhat mutable. Not mutable, right? So with that said, I want you guys to think about something. And let me know if you've noticed this before. If you've ever noticed when somebody like really wants to do something or doesn't want to do something, they tend to speak more along the aspects, like the least mutable aspects of themselves. So I don't run because my knees can't handle it. Probably heard that before. By the way, some of these are legit. Some of them maybe not so much, but yeah, I don't run because my knees can't handle it. I don't sing because I'm tone deaf. I'm an entrepreneur because it's in my blood. I'm great at martial arts because I have a low pain threshold. I've always been built to be a composer, right? and honestly, our physicality, as we'll get into in a second, is one of the least immutable aspects of our body. Like, I cannot change the natural color of my hair. I can't. I can't change the natural tone of my skin. I can't change my height. I can't change my shoe size. Um, right? There's things that are actually ingrained in our physical being that we can't do that. Now, here's the thing. This infers two things, and I promise this will tie back to networking, but I want to highlight this pattern. One, be extremely careful about, like, we should all be extremely careful about what we say about ourselves, because while it is possible, we'll say, to have bad knees, if anybody conflates that too much and ties maybe a bad habit or desired effect that they could achieve to something that they perceive as immutable, um, it can easily cement that lack of confidence within oneself. Now, that's the first thing. But on the flip side, um, if you, again, like, some people generally have knees that can't run, and I'm not saying pretend that you do if that's generally the case. But on the flip side, right, if sometimes we analyze ourselves and say, well, like, well, how much of that have I been saying is truly rooted in reality? Or better yet, if there's something I'm telling, like a negative feeling that I have, or a negative thought that I have about something, and there's proof to the contrary that I can find in a less mutable part of myself, well, I can rely on that to help me override some of the more mutable negative things I'm telling about myself. Um, so let's go back. Yeah, exactly, like a self-fulfilling prophecy, 100%. Yep. So, let's go back to this guy who's trying to quit, right? Well, yeah, confirmation bias too. Yep, 100%. And the stronger those confirmations are, the more likely they are to succeed. And we'll get into. By the way, this isn't anything that, like I create a spectrum of things, of just things I could think of. This is by no means like backed by Harvard Medical Review, but it's a good thought exercise, and use your best judgment when thinking about these. But we'll get into maybe how some of those different confirmations compare to each other. So let's go back to the guy trying to quit. If he's trying to quit because he just decides that he wants to stop, he might succeed, but honestly, probably not. Quitting smoking is hard. Now, if he's trying to quit because, let's say, he realized that smoking is linked to how he processes stress, but he's always prided himself on being an individual who can handle himself well in stressful situations, right? Maybe after reading like a piece of research that says actually smoking is linked to how people deal with stress, and he would be like, wait a second, no, like, that's not who I am. I'm always rock solid in stressful situations. So why am I smoking? Right? So this idea of, well, I smoke as a habit isn't is going to be easier to overturn, because who he is as an identity, as somebody who's rock solid in stressful situations, like, there's a conflict of interest there. And generally, we want to pick the things that are more solidified in who we are. Another one is maybe he realizes that his band is picking up and they're going to have to tour and play shows every night. And so he has to preserve his voice, or else, his dreams get shot, right? There's another reason where it's just like, oh, well, he has this huge dream that he's been working on since he was a kid. Why throw that out for some cigarettes? And again, it changes person to person. Like another one, he realizes it was a form of self-loathing, because he's not happy with his life and deep down wanted to end it early, but comes to realize that his life is actually worth living. He learns to love himself. And that goes into our subconscious beliefs, right? So you can see, or you can imagine, that a person's like, well, I'm going to try to quit smoking, is not going to have as high of a success rate as somebody who's, well, I'm going to quit smoking because I always handle myself in stressful situations in a healthy way. I'm going to quit smoking because my dream to be a rock star or a traveling musician is finally being fulfilled. I'm going to stop smoking because you know what? I am actually worth loving, and I don't want to treat myself this way anymore. Right? These are different conversations to have versus I'm going to try to quit smoking. So let's so let me go over here, and this is just kind of what I brainstormed. If you see something on here that's not on here, you drop it in the chat where you think it belongs. Like, the idea here isn't like this is, as I had mentioned before, to be a hardened stone set of rules, but rather just something to think about. And so when we think about, like, when I think about my highly mutable traits, well, there's, let me spell this right. There's individual actions, right? One day, maybe I drive a little too fast. One day, maybe I chill out my car. Who knows, right? My habits. I want to brush my teeth every day after I eat breakfast, right? My goals, my preferences, my opinions. These are things that could change day to day, week to week, maybe month to month. Then we get into like moderately mutable, like skills. Skills can take a little while to learn, but they can come and go. My interests, right? I've been interested in music for as long as I can remember, but there have been times where I've had dry spells where I don't always practice it or I get interested in other things. Your friend groups, your social circles, your mindsets, your attitudes, your ways of coping, your motivations. Then you have barely mutable, right? So your identity roles, your personal boundaries, or how you enforce those boundaries, which goes into emotional patterns, how you react to certain things that happen to you, your belief systems, your values, your subconscious beliefs, and then things that are almost non-mutable, right? Your temperament, introversion versus extroversion versus neuroticism, your cultural conditioning, your life-defining experiences, whether it's something that you're really proud of or a traumatic event, genetic dispositions, your feelings on existence, and your physiological traits, as we mentioned, like your body itself, right? And so think about, we'll go back to the running example, right? If somebody says, I'm bad at running, or I don't run because my knees are bad, they're way less likely to run than somebody who says, well, like, can I copy and paste this? I know there's, here we go. Versus someone who says, I don't run because I'm not good at it. The guy who's not good at it may still eventually be like, maybe I want to be good at it for some other reason, right? But this guy is just not ever going to run. So let's take, so let's do an example here, right? So let's say, like, again, I'm shy. And I'll actually do this in real time because kind of what spawned this exercise, if you will, is like me thinking about like, oh, how did I get over that? So we're going to take this I'm shy thing. This is maybe one of the reasons why I don't like networking, because I'm shy. And, I would think before it's an emotional pattern. I'm shy because I'm shy. Like whenever new people talk to me, I just, my response is I just don't like talking back. Until I realized, like, well, why is that? Why is that emotional pattern fixed, or what happened? Like, well, why was the reason I was shy? Well, I was shy when I was a kid because, like, I was picked on a little bit and kind of got under my skin. And so I closed myself off to people. Well, that kind of got into a coping mechanism. Oh, okay. So this isn't like it's set in stone. It's just a defense mechanism that you put up. So, like, you learned it. But maybe I could unlearn it. It might take some effort, but maybe I could unlearn it. All right. Well, what else? Well, there's also the honestly, I just don't really care. I tell myself I don't really care to talk to other people, like mindset or attitude. I'm not good at talking to people. Maybe I'd rather be alone, right? So these are all the reasons why maybe I'm shy that I think about it. Okay. And if I'm being very honest with myself, it's a little bit of all these things. But what if I start talking to myself and saying, well, you know what? Like, I don't want to be shy. Okay, interesting. That's a preference. I don't want to be shy. That's not really enough in and of itself to change that, but that's good. Like, I'm starting to counteract this. Okay, well, I don't want to be shy. Well, are there things I can do about it? Can I practice talking to people? Do I decide I want to practice talking to people? Okay. Well, yeah, that's something. That's something positive. But these are still pretty shallow because I could get exhausted in this. How do I say in this scenario? I may get tired of talking to folks and say like, well, maybe it's just an emotional pattern, and I revert back to this guy here. Well, then when I think about really what happened to me personally, there were a couple pieces when I was like, well, I don't want to be shy anymore. The first, without getting super duper into it, but there was how do I say this without sounding super morbid? There were 4 people that were going to commit suicide that I had indirectly helped out of that situation using some of my books and writings on like how I try to overcome this stuff. So I actually saved some lives, which is kind of cool. And that's like a meaningful existence to me. That's awesome. Like if I could save more lives just by being who I am, well, that's way more important than it's just kind of a response I have, or like, I don't really like talking to people. That's so much more important than that. I also think, well, I am introverted, but here's the thing with introversion. That doesn't mean I don't like talking to people. It just means there's certain environments that I strive in more than others. And one of those is introverts tend to be, myself included, are really great in one-on-one conversations. I love having one-on-one, like deep one-on-one conversations with people. I eat that stuff up. I'm like, well, there's opportunities for that. I might have to like change my strategy, but what's a big networking event except a bunch of single people that I could have a one-on-one conversation with? That sounds kind of cool. Okay. So my introversion doesn't really have to get in the way. And I think about even, maybe something not quite as deep, but still pretty deep is like, well, yeah, even though maybe I didn't have it as easy socially as a kid, for the friends I did have, I was really loyal. I was always really supportive. And my friends and family value me. Like people who've been around me say I'm a pretty decent person to be around. Maybe their opinions are biased, but like I know that I've always been there for people. And thanks, dude. I appreciate you. But like this is who I am, right? And there's a lot of good that I can bring, and I can keep going. But it's like, well, what my coping mechanisms are now. I've my cope. It's funny, but like I'm a person who like really likes to attack a problem. That's who I am. Now it's just like whether it's a crazy run or wanting to have like build a career in music or building communities or just my day-to-day job, like I love solving problems, and I deserve to solve problems for myself, right? Going back to the subconscious police, like I'm good enough to have problems solved for myself. I deserve to use my problem solving skills for myself. And you can see how this can go. So like now, if I go into one of these networking events, I'm like, oh man, this is going to be like really, really tiring. There's going to be so many people there. Well, I don't think that's nearly as strong of an argument as saying, but you know what? I've really helped a lot of people in my life. I enjoy one-on-one conversations. I've always been good to other people. Like there's, as best as I can, we always make mistakes, but like I try to be good to other people. I've done this long enough that I've had successful conversations. So like I'm going to use this fuel to keep practicing, but whatever that is, right? Like I can now think about these deeper aspects of myself to be like, you know what? Ah, maybe I'm really not all that shy. Maybe I can do good in this. So we could even do like maybe networking feels scummy, right? Why? Because you think you have nothing to provide, and that's a belief, right? So, or maybe you're a noob and like that's an identity role. Okay. But we've grown up in a society. The United States is flawed like any other country. And per one of my rules, like nothing to be political here, but by and large, we grew up in a society where people try to help other people through tough times. And a perfect example of that I can remember that whenever I lean on this is I remember pretty vividly 9/11. I was born in 92, so I was old enough to remember when all that happened. And I remember the aftermath. And there was some issues for sure in the aftermath, but I had never seen the United States more closely aligned at the same time. And people want to help each other. I remember about people on subways, like subway operators driving back under the World Trade Center to get people, pack them on the trains to get them home, even though it was dangerous, right? Like we grew up in the U.S. and by and large, I think people around here do like to help each other, even if we are a flawed society like everybody else, right? But that's part of my culture. I'm like, you know what? That's my neighbors. That's who I am. Hell yeah. I also like maybe helping people, and it doesn't always have to be deep, right? I just like helping people, right? That's motivation. I want to help folks out. I value seeing other people be happy and succeeding, right? That's a part of my values. And ultimately, like, I just want to live a good life. It doesn't have to be super deep, but these are some of the things I can check off my boxes. So, and, to tie this back to some of the things that you all had mentioned before, well, it's like, what if I'm just meeting friends? Like that's pretty much a lot of what I said boils back down to that. Like you deserve to have friends. You guys are friendly people. You value seeing other people succeed, and all these things are so much deeper than like maybe a preference of I don't like networking, right? And if you put networking as like a preference, and then all these wonderful things that you have about yourself as deeper things to counteract that preference, that's why some of those things that you all have mentioned have worked. So that's pretty much really all I have on this. And, again, it really boils down to what you think about it. But I hope that by going through this and, maybe helping put a mirror as to why some of the things you've done have worked. And in doing so, maybe even strengthen that conviction even more in case, sometimes things that we rely on, maybe they lose some of their poignancy, and maybe this can help bring it back some. But yeah, I hope this made sense. You guys are free to speak too, but that's all I got. So I'll leave it there and show if you guys have any questions or anything. Stop streaming too. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate you. Thank you, X. Thank you. Cool. Let me shut out of YouTube real quick.